Good evening and welcome back to our meeting, but before we can go on with the public meeting, we need to come out of our in-camera. So Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Council come out of in-camera at 7:09 p.m.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. So again, welcome back to everyone, to people watching at home. Why? Council is continuing after a closed meeting session, and we move now to public comments. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments regarding items on the agenda in person during the council meeting. I want to remind everyone that if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and I will call you to the microphone. Before sharing your comments, please clearly state and spell your name for the record, and each member of the public will be given 5 minutes to speak to an item on today's agenda. We will probably be able to give you a 1-minute warning so that you see how much time you have left to wrap things up. We do understand that a couple of members of the public have already indicated a desire to comment on a petition that was circulated regarding a garage and garden suite amending bylaw that was passed on July 3rd of this year. As we want to hear from as many members of the public as possible, we ask that speakers try to be succinct, with comments focused on presenting council with new information. Before we get started, oh, here it is. I should have read ahead. Before we get started, please be aware that a bell will ring at the 4-minute mark, providing you 1 minute to conclude your comments. And our first speaker listed is Mr. Claude Brown. If you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone, and you'll be speaking on 10.3 petition land use amending bylaw 24-14 garden and garage suites.
Mic wasn't on. Start over. Okay. Can you hear me? Thanks. So, as you know, I am the organizer of the petition and the information presented before you to repeal the 24-14 garden bylaw suite. Based on the wording of the MGA, I must concede to the CAO, wherever he is, and administration, they are correct in deeming this petition to be insufficient and not sufficient to automatically prompt an action from council to respond to it. Above stated, there are some lessons to be learned and important facts about the information in this petition that council should carefully consider its significance and correct course should they choose. First of all, there were some missteps. We started a little late. We're about 2.5 weeks late. The bylaw passed on July 3rd, and there were 60 days to complete the petition from the time of the passing of the bylaw. I probably should have organized more petitioners to get better coverage of the town, as I only covered about 10% of the town, and I was pretty much the only person going door to door talking to people. That being said, we still did get 600 or more signatures, and would not have gotten over 600 if it weren't for the help of some people in the room. Advertising and personal expense, I probably could have taken out a bit of time off of work to do this, which would have been beneficial to getting more people. But I did not, or taken out some advertising because people didn't know. About 9 and 10 people that I spoke with did not even know about the bylaw being passed or what it was about. I believe that under different circumstances, we could have easily gotten 10%. However, those are lessons learned and not lessons done. So the significance of the petition. We did get over 600 signatures, and 600 signatures is not something that is of inconsequence. 626 by the administrator and 627 by my count, but that's neither here nor there. That's just under 5% of the population. Of those respondents, 626 were against the bylaw. I'm going to use the administration's numbers now. Others were 49 individuals who were in favor of the bylaw. I did keep a count, and approximately 60 to 75 individuals who are undecided and wanted to research more on the subject. That puts us at about 750 respondents in the town. Why does that matter? The Facebook survey that was done over 2 years ago, that was the basis and justification for this bylaw, had 1/3 that number, and none of those people are verifiable as having lived in town. 84% of citizens opposed contradicts the 64% of citizens that were in favor of the bylaw, according to that Facebook survey upon which this bylaw was passed. Relevancy, the yearly citizen satisfaction survey garners between 700 and 800 respondents a year. This petition has garnered just as many. So the petition should be deemed somewhat relevant, if not sufficient. What can be gleaned? In summary, you have before you a petition of 626 residents that are against this bylaw and want it repealed. In my engagement, I can tell you that's around 84% of those I met with. I'm here to inform council those signatures indicate really two things. 626 citizens, I know I'm being precise, now know of administration's objective to densify our neighborhoods, and those residents reject that objective in direction. Citizens and council need to pay more attention to one another. This is the other point. Clearly, there's a disconnect between what council thinks is consensus and what is actually consensus. A positive outcome of this petition is that citizens are now paying attention. What will council do, this is rhetorical, to improve that dialogue in future? Although not compelled, council can repeal any bylaw it passes, whether it is compelled or simply because it decides it's the right thing to do. The justification and unverifiable Facebook survey, thank you, the bell is rung, showing support for this bylaw was flawed from the beginning. The petition, if anything, proves the contrary of that support. Administration and citizens should have paid closer attention to this, and its development and passing could have been averted based on what the public actually felt. Imagine if over 600 people were in this room on July 3rd instead of just 2. People didn't know. Around 750 respondents were on the petition, or were spoken with. 626 were verified as being against. 9 in 10 didn't know. It's never too late to ask, and it's never too late to correct course. Thank you.
Thank you. To our CAO, could you comment on a couple of things said regarding the residents didn't know? Could you give us some information on how the public was, how the information was available to public?
Land use bylaw amendments typically take 18 to 24 months from beginning to finish. So this started in August of 2022 and it concluded in June, so 20-ish, 21 months or so right in that range. There was an insert in the August 2022 utility newsletter. There was 8 advertisements in the Strathmore Times, including 4 advertisements of the public hearing on June 12th, 2024, June 19th, 2024, June 26th, 2024, and July 3rd, 2024. As well, the town did digital media, again, for the feedback that's been referenced in the survey, but there was also a notice of the public hearing on social media on June 20th, June 24th, and June 25th, 2024. Stuff that the town didn't initiate, so newspaper articles and that was a series of 12 articles in local media between 2020 and 2024.
Thank you. And just for the public who are watching at home and who are here, I just wanted to emphasize that the decision-making wasn't made in the shadows. We gave a lot of information out. We posted a lot of information to have the public become aware. The idea of having garden suites and garage suites came from a place of us being incredibly worried about the lack of housing for people in the town. The other thing that I hope people realize is this isn't going to just happen willy-nilly. We're not just rezoning things. There is a great deal of work that has to be done by anyone thinking of having a garage conversion. It would cost a very high amount of money. You'd have to bring it up to the current codes. So it's not something that's going to happen all over the community. And another thing for people to know is that any one of this council could bring it back in 6 months and we could discuss it again. So there is that option as well. If am I correct, Deputy Mayor, did this pass unanimously?
It was unanimous on July 3rd, yeah.
Yeah. So any one of us can bring it back in 6 months and the bylaw can be re-examined and reworked, or it could be discussed. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for bringing this to, let's say, bringing it to our attention, I guess. And for all of you, I just wanted to commend you for all of your hard work, actually. What you did, I believe, is one of the checks and balances in our democracy that actually kind of keeps our democracy functioning in a somewhat healthy way. We need to be second-guessed. We need to be questioned. That is, we work for you, and that is absolutely your right, and I'm glad that you did this. I guess, in light of, the information, I guess, that's been presented here, what would, and like having spoken to quite a few people about this, do you have any recommendations or suggestions for how we could avoid something like this in the future, as far as, like, obviously there's obviously, some effort, on the town's part to make people aware of these things. And I can understand certainly how it doesn't reach people. Do you have any suggestions for how to better reach people in the future?
Thank you for the compliment and the question. Thank you. I didn't get to it in my my presentation, but I do think that the Facebook survey was a misstep. And I think that there are a lot of citizens, elderly, who aren't on computers. They simply don't have access to that. Since Facebook has stopped sharing news articles, those people that are on Facebook aren't receiving electronic versions of the Strathmore Times. And so I think that perhaps a mail-out would have been appropriate in this case, or perhaps maybe some signage in neighborhoods, because this is, even though the maps, it was stated, it's 20% of the town, the blocks on that map don't indicate that. And I think really there should have been some signage in the neighborhoods, even be it at an expense, so that people actually know what it's about to come talk to the public hearing. I also think that doing second and third reading right off of a meeting is not really the best way to go. I actually think there should be some pause in between meetings when you're passing bylaws of this nature. If you had paused, per Mr. Wiley's suggestion, there might have been more time to socialize this and maybe more people would have come out to the next meeting. Unfortunately, even though advertising was done, sir, and I do appreciate that, I don't think it reached enough people. Hardly anyone knew about it, and that's the truth.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Wiley.
I also want to say thank you, Claude Brown. It's very difficult to get the word out. So there's been many meetings. I've just wondered, like, how do we have people hear what's going on? And what you've done is you've brought attention to an issue. Actually, the issue is bigger than just garden and garage suites. It's densification. And so in the next year, as this council considers how we're moving forward and how we're balancing, level of service, tax increases, and can we balance that by having densification, what you've done is you've shown us that 84% of the houses that you got answers from are saying no.
Correct.
And so maybe this bylaw doesn't turn out like you want, or maybe it does in 6 months, maybe it does in the next council, and it reverses. But what I'm saying is, for me, I'm hearing the people of Strathmore just resoundingly clear, and it's definitely going to influence the way that I look at this issue moving forward. So just a sincere thank you for giving us that information. Thank you.
Thank you. I've always prided myself on keeping an open mind on issues, because we do have to listen to the public. I do want to offer one example. It's a real example that has come to me in the last week. I have an ailing, the person is an ailing father in the family, not able to stay in the split level due to health concerns, is very interested in having a secondary suite on the property so his son and his family can take over the split level and the grandparents would be there on site and they'd be there in case they need care, and they'd be on one level so that they could stay on their property longer. So there's an example of one of the reasons why this council considered secondary suites. It can be a way for seniors to stay on their property longer. It can be a way for seniors to get help and to support the family unit more. So there are good things that come from this as well. Perhaps this came a bit early in the town of Strathmore, but I will keep an open mind if a councillor chooses to bring this forward within 6 months or in 6 months' time. But thank you for your efforts. Any other comments? And then I'll go to the next person from the public.
May I say one thing to your anecdotal story? I also met with 49 people that were in favor, and so I'm not closed-minded to the idea or people's needs. What I object to is the blanket rezoning and not sort of letting it run its course. That is really the big problem. It's not the odd person that wants it or needs it, and I've got neighbors as well, and I completely understand. This one lady that I spoke to whose son has moved back home, has lost his job. He's living in his camper. Shouldn't be saying this, I guess, but he is. And so having him live in a more dignified establishment like a little home in his backyard would be beneficial. I completely understand her point of view. And so to her, I hope she gets her permit in before someone else comes along and repeals or changes the bylaw. But I think that was still available even prior to the bylaw. If people had applied to the town to do something of that nature, they probably could have still done it, but not done it on a blanket scale. And so I don't object to those things. What I object to is sort of the global version of it, and that's all. Thank you, though, for sharing that.
Thank you. Our next person to speak is, sorry, Councillor Langmaid.
Sorry. Hey, how's it going?
Mr. Brown, how are you?
Nice seeing you again.
Hey, good seeing you too. So just for clarification for people in the audience, Mr. Brown did knock on my door while he was out petitioning, and we had quite a long conversation on my doorstep.
She did not sign.
I did not sign. We weren't able to eventually see eye to eye on this, but it was a very respectful conversation. So thank you for knocking on my door. I just have a point of clarification question from administration. You've referenced a Facebook survey. Did we conduct a survey on Facebook, or was there a survey conducted that was advertised on Facebook? Because
That's a good question.
I recall it being a survey that was advertised on Facebook, but completed on a separate website.
Yeah, thanks.
I've got the answer.
Yeah.
My name's Chuck. We advertised a Facebook. It was a SurveyMonkey survey on Facebook.
Okay.
So still online.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So we advertised a SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey petition. Sorry, is that me? SurveyMonkey on Facebook. Yeah, SurveyMonkey questionnaire. That
Okay.
we used.
So I just wanted to make sure it wasn't, something where it was, hey, one of those polls you see pop up on Facebook every once in a while. So it was an official survey that people were directed to through Facebook.
Right, but it was still online. Ironically, we also had an online survey that we couldn't submit. We had 139 signatures on that, not verifiable. You can't verify what's online. It's not provable.
Yes, slightly. You are correct. Slightly different context, but yes, you are correct. Thank you. That was my only question. I just wanted to make sure I
you.
understood that. Thank you.
And I did like speaking with you, by the way.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Brown, you're very well spoken, and I really appreciate the integrity and the comprehensiveness that you brought to this and the work that you did. And I agree with you. It's not out of place, and it's not misspent, and it is valued by myself. I certainly don't sit on the same side as you do, and I've given all my reasons for that before. I won't waste anyone's time with that. But one of the things that I have done since the onset of your petition and the interest I've seen generated around it was to look at other communities that have brought in bylaws such as this and watch very carefully to see what the outcomes have been and to see whether or not that blanket rezoning has created blanket rezoning, and it hasn't. In fact, I think Calgary has brought in something like 11,000 secondary suites, in-house secondary suites since 2023 in a city of, 1.5 million. And so I think that the same thing, and it's one of the reasons that I'm in favor of this. I think that it speaks to those incidences that Mayor Fuel has spoken about. This council isn't giving people $10,000 to improve their suites like the city of Calgary did. And so people are not going to undertake this unless they have these really compelling reasons. And so while I do respect everything that you've brought to this table, and I respect the information that you've given us, it's helpful. But I do believe that this is not going to become the overwhelming disaster that you have predicted. I think that it's going to become a reasoned, needful process that's going to allow people in this community that don't have homes to have homes. And thank you again.
Yeah. Appreciate your opinion. I'm no savant, and I hope you're right.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
Our next speaker is Jen Chason.
Hi, I'm Jen Chasson, Chiasson, and I was also going to talk about garden suites, but I feel like we've really discussed that in quite a bit of detail. So I'm just going to share that I was part of the canvassing process on a very small scale. I did not come anywhere near doing the work of my friend Claude, but I wanted, just going to open up my phone here. I wanted to share that there's this idea that somehow there's NIMBYism that is keeping people from wanting garden suites in Strathmore. And that has been kind of an online theme that I've heard, and even some themes just in conversations that I've had with different people. And I love people, I love to collect their stories, and so when I was canvassing, it actually was out of interest in hearing what people at the door were saying myself. And I encountered an interesting situation where we knocked on the door of a single-family home that was being rented out by individual rooms. And so we faced the tenant there who signed the petition because she could not bear the thought of having her landlord put another unit in the backyard. So she was already sharing her home with other independent residents, and the thought of having just one more person on her lot didn't sit so right with her. And she wasn't in a situation of having autonomy where she could move on or go to another place. This was the home that she was in. And then when we went next door to the single-family home that was owner-occupied, those residents signed the petition for the same reason. They didn't want to absorb another resident on the lot next to them. And so it got me thinking about NIMBYism. Are both of these people NIMBYs? And as I circled around it, I realized that in Strathmore, there already was a path to add density or to add a suite onto your own lot. It just was a bit of a process. And so the blanket rezoning, the idea of kind of a resident as developer, blanket rezoning didn't create that because there already was a process. Rather, what it did was it attracted investors into Strathmore. And so if you were to look at a map of Calgary and draw a big circle around it, Strathmore still is the most affordable community to purchase single-family homes. And so it wasn't the residents that were already here who had the path to get the secondary suite that needed it. It was the investors. And so with that, kind of to go all the way around it, what people were saying wasn't that they didn't want it in their own backyard, it's that they didn't want it in an investor's backyard. They didn't want it in someone's backyard that wasn't invested into this community. And there was another thought I had that's escaped me. That'll just have to do. But it's not that we as residents don't want to absorb the units, it's that we don't want to have, actually I'm back to that thought and I'm just going to share it with you quickly. So there has been a lot of talk about Calgary's blanket rezoning and how that compares with Strathmore's rezoning, and we've been assured that it's not the same thing. But actually, to the point that I just made, I would argue that it's potentially more reckless from an investor standpoint. And I guess what I would mean by that is in Calgary, if an investor were to purchase a single-family lot and knock it down with the intent of densifying it, they would need a substantial investment. They would need time when the lot sat empty. Whereas in Strathmore, now because we have this easy path to get an accessory suite onto the property or a secondary suite, they can purchase a house, immediately put a tenant in it, in the top, maybe even the bottom, while they're dropping the tiny home in the backyard. And so what it does is this bylaw, while well-intended, while I hear the heart of Councillor Peterson in wanting to provide homes, it actually just creates opportunities for investors. My last thought at the bell is that council has been so diligent in rezoning lots for density and for multifamily homes, and I'm appreciative of it. But those homes have not been built, and so it's not about having residents now build homes, it's about getting those homes built, and we need to focus on that. So thank you. I don't know how to turn that off, though.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I feel like I could listen to you and Claude speak all night. You've got some really great points, lots for me to consider. And I just want to really reiterate to everybody, this is really what this next year on council is going to be about, is managing a budget, whether it's taxes, services, or densification. And so what you've done in this summer, to everyone who's worked on this, is you've brought real information forward to us in a way that's relevant and meaningful and something that I can think about. And I hope that you all keep in touch with me. I hope you all pay attention to what's going on in the next year as we look at our municipal development plan. And these are the kinds of conversations that are going to be had. So please keep in touch, keep on watching. Grassroots democracy really does work. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I just have a question for either Mr. Proctor or for administration. And I'm wondering if we have data to support the contention that investors are the ones that are applying for registered secondary suites in our community at this point.
I don't know that we have that specific. I mean, we could go back and look in the files, but we don't, that's not the type of questions we typically ask, so. Yeah.
So there is no data that would show that,
Well,
that who's coming into
I mean, if it's the registered property owner now, that would be easy, yeah, for sure. But,
at this point, there is
if it's
no
not the current property owner, it might be a bit speculative is all I'm saying.
So at this point, there is no data to support that. I do also want to say that I don't think that this is easy. There is nothing easy about going through this process that this new bylaw has laid out. And having looked at it very, very carefully for people in my own neighborhood, because it is a densification area. And so several years ago, back I believe to 2009, when Mayor Fuel was first on council, densification opportunities were undertaken by the council of the day, and certainly they focused very heavily on the downtown south area where I live. And so that area has been densified intensively, and it has been a huge success in terms of what it's brought to community, what it's brought to the separate school that anchors that community, and what it's brought to families that have been able to live in sometimes very close quarters until they can afford the next space. And so the old process of the secondary suites has been very successful there and has wrought densification in the way that we needed it for our downtown. And certainly what we've seen in terms of that downtown, I believe that that's where the densification will continue, and it has certainly brought about significant positive changes to our retail community as well in the downtown. And I could go on and on about the benefits that it has brought to the families that live there. And I'm one of the very few bungalows left, and I'm okay with that. I see the need for it, and I live it every day, and I am very much in favor of it. And so I think that this zoning bylaw that we have will continue to be very arduous for the people that are undertaking it. And I have full confidence that the that the people that are overseeing it in this town office will ensure that due diligence is done. If I am wrong, as Claude wished that I wouldn't be, then there's nothing stopping this council from revisiting it in the future. And I think that there is a difference between investors coming in and setting up multiple supports for people to dwell and the issue of slum landlord, which I've certainly seen in this community as well. I think there's a difference. But thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Any other comments from council? Thank you. Are there any other people in the gallery who would like to speak regarding this issue? And just for the public at home and for the gallery who are here, I just want to reassure you too that Town Council and our administration and staff have been working really hard to try to have more multi-unit housing available in Strathmore. We have at least 3 multi-unit projects that are in various stages of development. So those are on the horizon sooner than we thought. So those are coming. We also have 2 subdivisions, one in Ranch and one in the northern part of Strathmore Lakes that have already started on construction. So we should see in the next, I'm not sure when, don't quote me, but soon we should start to see more available units of various sizes, from individual residences to multi-unit apartments available for people. So that is on the horizon and it is coming. So we hope that that will help with affordability as well as the availability for people who are looking for places to live in this town. So if we have no other comments from the public tonight, then we can move on to the next section, which is item 6, delegations. We have 6.1, 2024-2025 RCMP Q1 Municipal Policing Report, and we have our Staff Sergeant Will Gosh with us again tonight.
Your Worship,
Good evening.
if I can just, I just want to apologize to the gallery for being on my phone. It's because someone who's coming into the meeting at a later time was asking me about times, and so I apologize for being on my phone during the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, Staff Sergeant.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. All my comments this evening will be made through the CAO to the Chair and the rest of Council for simplicity. I thank you all once again for allowing me to appear before you to provide you an update on our policing, community safety and policing priorities for the town of Strathmore. What we have before you is our Q1 report of our fiscal year, which covers the time frame of April 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2024. Moving to our first priority, which was the reduction of property crimes, that being of theft of vehicles, theft from vehicles, and break and enters in our area. We have a number of programs still underway, similar to what we've had in the past couple of years, that we have seen some good traction with and some good results. First of which being our habitual offender management program. During this quarter, we were monitoring 13 habitual offenders, 8 of whom are in the town of Strathmore, for a minimum of 43 checks that were conducted on all of them. I can say that 4 of those 8 habitual offender management cases have been transitioned, whether it be that their conditions are no longer active, or they've left our area, or are incarcerated, which in some ways is positive, in other ways, again, hopefully that our subjects there can find ways to maintain a law-abiding lifestyle, but for the most part, I can say during our compliance checks that we were finding our subjects in part in the program compliant with their checks. Our Persons of Interest program remains in place, as well as a security screw program, which is to prevent theft of license plates, still remains in effect at our dealerships in town, as well as at the fire department and at the detachment and at our Langdon office. I can say we've had a number of refills since the program started. It has had some uptake, and whether it's having a total effect or not, I do notice that our theft of license plates in the community have dropped slightly. You'll notice before you, I've provided a graphic display as far as where we are in our progress throughout this fiscal year. As in last year, the red line in the graph demonstrates on a quarterly basis what our historical high levels are, and the blue line represents our historical lows. The Q1 graph, what we see, is while we did see a slight increase from last year on our break and enters, we're at our historical averages, which is within our range of, I guess, tolerance, if you will. I hesitate to use that phrase because I don't believe that any level of crime is tolerable. However, I do want to assure the public that they are aware where we are with our historical levels of crime and what seems to be consistent within our community. I can say positively with theft of motor vehicles and theft from motor vehicles, we saw dramatic drops in Q1 in both of those areas, as you can see in the graphs before you, and the comparisons between last year to this year, as well as our averages. Theft of motor vehicles dropped significantly by over 2/3 from last year, as well as down by about 1/3 from our historical averages. Our theft from motor vehicles, again, saw nearly a 3/4% drop. 3/4 drop from last year, and again, nearly 60% drop from our historical averages. So we can say that that's certainly been positive. With Q1 last year, I believe Council will recall that I did point out we did have some habitual offenders that moved into town that did create a bit of an issue with attempted thefts and thefts. That was a bit of an anomaly that saw a bit of an increase last year in the same time frame. However, this year, I can say we have seen a significant decrease in those areas. The break-in enters, I've provided a breakdown as far as what the percentages are. 3/4 were residences as opposed to 1/4 with businesses. I can say in one case, it was a habitual offender that we apprehended who was a resident of Calgary that had over 99 negative occurrences just under RCMP jurisdictions over the past 5 years. In that case, we were able to apprehend that person. We were able to hold them in custody, and eventually they were convicted of that crime. I've given you a breakdown for theft of vehicles by type. It seems to be that during the first quarter, that the majority of our vehicles here, if I'm reading this correctly here, excuse me. Just see maybe just my copy here, but I believe that pickup trucks are the main source of thefts in our community, just based on some crimes of they may be crimes of opportunity, but that seems to be the desirable vehicle that was, at least in Q1, that our offenders were taking. Moving on to our traffic safety enforcement and our road safety initiatives, we still implemented a number of measures with respect to regular enforcement in our check stop program, as you'll see. We've also maintained our bar walk program, which did result in over 18 bar walks in our establishments that at least our members were able to record. I'm happy to say that our reportable collisions and injury collisions, again, did see significant decreases through Q1, as you'll see. Again, reportable collisions down by about 60% from last year, and then our 6-year averages down by nearly 1/3. Injury collisions, again, saw another significant decrease. Happy to say that our roads within Strathmore we do enjoy a high level of safety within our roads within Strathmore. Our third priority, and equally important, is our community engagement priority within Strathmore. Our members throughout Q1 still maintain a high level of community engagement. Our school visits remain high. Constable Villanueva, as you'll see in the first photograph, enjoys visiting the schools and certainly enjoys at least showing the youngsters the police vehicles. They get pretty excited, and the stickers and tattoos are a pretty big hit too. Our members participated in the Sirens of Life blood donation program that occurred in April. So we did see the full team participate, and everyone maintained consciousness. We'll say that it went well. We also undertook or are participating in a community, or at least a work experience program in partnership with Bow Valley College, where we took in 2 students from the program, and they spent a number of weeks with us on Wednesdays for 6 hours per session, where they were learning more about police work. All of these students were potential applicants for police services, and that's why they demonstrated a high level of interest. We were happy to participate in the program, and as you can see, that was graduation night where they got to test out some equipment, and they've moved on. I'm told that of the people who participated in the surrounding detachments within Calgary, a large percent of them have already submitted their applications to apply for law enforcement positions. We are going to be participating in this program again this year, so we will see another 2 students from the college. Smile Cookie Day and Camp Day sales, our members, including myself, are participating in that. And one point I can say that I neglected to include in the report was the Lead by Example powwow, where our members were there in Red Surge for the grand entries. I think it was a good experience for 2 of our younger members on the Friday night. that they were able to participate in such an event. They were, I said, blown away is to say, to put it mildly. They were very impressed with the regalia, the culture, and they were very happy to take part in such a wonderful cultural event. We did implement a coloring contest late in the last fiscal year, but winding up into quarter one of this fiscal year. The topic was, what do the police do in your community? We saw I would say at least over 60 or 70 entrants from the various schools. We canvassed all of them in our detachment area. We divided the categories in grades 1 to 3 and 4 to 6, and we had first and second prizes for both. And as you can see, I've included a graphic of the winning entries, as well as our attendance to the schools to award the prizes. First prize was a large stuffed RCMP bear and or moose, and the second prize was a smaller version. So you can see the entrants, the winners, and the presentations that we're able to do before the end of the school year. Moving on to our other initiatives, again, just a matter of, it sounds like the volume's turned up on me now, a matter of just awareness for the community. We do have other programs in place, such as our youth diversion program, the Alberta Capture program, which is laid out in here. We're hopeful for more people to join the program. We've got an online crime reporting, which you can also access through the Alberta RCMP app. That's a very useful app to have. It has all of our media releases, a lot of our crime statistical reporting, the crime map, etc. It's a good, useful tool. Lastly, our Watch Clerk program is still in effect. I just remain grateful for our municipalities who are participating in the program. This program, again, all of the positions are filled, but provides valuable support for our members to remain in community and on the road where they need to be, patrolling our communities and, again, moving forward on our our community safety initiatives. I've also provided you some information here as far as our call volumes, both within regular calls and traffic calls. For service through quarter one, we're roughly on par with where we were last year, with some slight variations, but we'll remain consistent in those numbers. That's the quarter one report. I'm open to questions, should there be any from council or anyone else who would wish to pose a question.
Thank you for your report, Staff Sergeant, and it's definitely reassuring to see the reduction in some of those areas. And again, I just want to commend you and your detachment for all that you do as far as community engagement. I mean, so many things I go to, you and your members are attending, so I'm really, really impressed with that. The only question I have, and it's just, it's something maybe while it's fresh in your mind as the Staff Sergeant, how did things go during the Stampede weekend? Were you comfortable with how things were? Was it a good weekend overall as far as behaviors, that kind of thing?
I'd say over the past 3 years since I've been here, I think we're getting better at it. We have a strong level of engagement that happens before the event with a number of various events that happen in the community during that weekend. We had strong participation with our partner agencies that were out with us. More directly to your question, it was a very good weekend. We experienced relatively low level of issues that required our attention. Call volumes remained consistent. It was overall a safe event. There's nothing that came up that was of any kind of alarm. It was a very good event this year with a high level of attendance at the grounds. Sergeant Salmon was there personally as well, doing some patrols throughout the grounds themselves. And again, the overall observations, it was a very good event this year.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Sure, I said this to you in private before the meeting, but I'd like to say it in public. It's just like many members of Strathmore, I've been really glued to the media, just looking for updates on all the just horrific events going on in and around our county and our neighboring counties and area. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank you. I want to thank your staff. I want to thank all the men and women in blue who are out there keeping us safe and secure. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, and that reminds me of a question I was going to ask you. I got a Facebook message question, and I'm wondering if you could just make a general explanation while we have you here and while the public are watching in person and at home. The question dealt with when you have a major incident, such as the one that happened in Strathaven in the last couple of days. Could you explain to the public why more information is not shared with the public during an event like that? And thank you.
Well, I can say each event is different. I can explain a little bit more about what happened recently with our most recent response. Our members were attending a residence in response to a person who is in deep crisis. These situations can be very unpredictable, especially with direct contact with our members. I can tell you that the response that was seen, including the other resources we brought in, is out of an abundance of caution to ensure that not only the residents is in close proximity to where our members were responding are safe, but also to utilize the expertise at our disposal within Alberta RCMP to ensure that we can make effective contact with the person, continue with effective dialogue, initiate de-escalation techniques if necessary, and most importantly, to ensure that the person receives the help and support that they need. Now, during the incident itself, we do make sure that notifications are made through the media. Our Alberta Media Relations Office did issue a media advisory that there was an operation underway in the area and to avoid the area where police were active. And again, another notification was sent once we were finished in the area. I can tell you I notify our administrations of the applicable municipalities whenever an event occurs to ensure that they're aware in the event that the town or applicable municipality that may be involved receives questions from residents. And at the conclusion of the event itself, at times there may or may not be a media release depending on the outcome. I can tell you that there's a lot of thought and consideration that goes into weighing out the public need to know versus a person's privacy interests. In this particular case, or not in this case, but in cases before where we've had a strong police presence and a response, at times media releases have gone out. At times I've received inquiries that bring about the need to release more information. In this case, it's the first I'm hearing that there was a concern from a resident that wanted to know more as far as this particular encounter is concerned. And if we were not perhaps as responsive as maybe the public may have wanted, I can take full responsibility for that myself because it is my responsibility. What I can say is that if there was a risk to the general public outside of the area that we were operating, or if this was going to go, or if the issue would expand past the initial response or operational period, or again, if there was any risk that was not able to be mitigated by our members in place, then the notification would be immediately made. Sufficient resources to ensure that any threat or risk would be mitigated, would be brought into place immediately. That was not the case in this particular matter. I would like to assure the public again that our members were there to ensure the safety of the person who we were interacting with, the safety of our members, as well as, again, over extreme abundance of caution for other neighboring residents to ensure that they were safe as well. I won't say that the number of members that were there were too many. I don't think there's too many members we can bring to bear to make sure that, again, the safety of everyone involved is maintained.
Thank you for your response, and I'll make sure that the resident is aware of that. Again, thank you for your presentation, Sergeant Salmon. Good to see you again. I can't tell you enough how impressed I am with the reports and the visuals and the graphs. It makes it that much easier to understand. You're the first staff sergeant we've had who's done this kind of reporting to us, and it is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So we move now to item 7, consent agenda. Are there any items from the consent agenda that councillors would like to see removed and discussed in public separately? I think we had one already specified. Is that correct?
The letter?
Yes.
No, that wasn't on the consent agenda.
Oh, okay, sorry. So we're good then? I need a councillor then to make a motion concerning that consent agenda. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move.
Sorry, Councillor Montgomery? Okay, thank you. Councillor Langmaid?
All right. I'd like to move that council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda reports by an omnibus motion. 10.1 Quality Management Plan, bracket QMP, bracket 2024 to 2029. Seniors Lodge / hospice feasibility assessment extension. 10.3 petition, land use amending bylaw 24-14, garden and garage suites, and 10.4 Alberta Community Partnership grant application, stormwater management cooperative.
Thank you for that. And I just want to make one comment on item 10.4, the Alberta Community Partnership grant application. For those people who aren't reading the agenda or haven't seen it or are watching at home, this is something that the town of Strathmore is supporting in regards to our neighboring municipality, the city of Chestermere. We've all worked really hard. It's been pretty easy to work with them. Our councillors have met, and there are some exciting opportunities for some collaboration and partnerships. And I believe we're happy to support them in their grant application, and I believe they have some interest in rejoining the CSMI. So I just wanted to comment on that. And now I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. So now we move to item 8.1, regular council meeting minutes from September 4th, 2024. Councillor Montgomery, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you. Yeah, I meant to ask to review the minutes from the previous council meeting, so I'll just deal with administration directly on that. And with that, I will move that council adopt the September 4th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, thank you. You've heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. We now move to item 9.1, land use bylaw, amending bylaw number 24-16, 137 Orchard Way. And that is on page 87. Good evening again, Kate, and welcome
Good
back.
evening again. We have nothing to add to our presentation, and we recommend second and third reading tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, that's on page 62 if I sent you the wrong way, everybody. You've heard from Kate, we've had questions, and we've had the public hearing. So, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Let me get to the right page here. Yeah, thank you. Now let's just find it in the book. All right, thank you. I will move that council give second reading to bylaw number 24-16, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw number 14-11.
Is there further discussion or comments on that, Deputy Mayor Wiley?
Sure, just for everybody at home or in the gallery, this refers specifically to the Orchard Way development that we heard earlier, and I will definitely be voting in favor of it. It's a development I'm really excited about and anticipating.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further comments? All in favor? That motion is carried. Councillor Peterson.
I'd move that council give third reading to bylaw number 24-16, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw number 14-11.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Once again, despite Claude Brown's advice that we don't do two second and third reading on one night, I, in this case, definitely disagree. I think this is a project that needs to move forward. We had no speakers come out against it, and it's just something that we're all that I'm looking forward to.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wiley. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We move now to 10.5, Strathmore Overnight Shelter on page 260. Claudette, are you speaking to this, or do we just refer to the agenda item? Or Jonathan?
Thank you, Worshiping Council. I believe it was at a previous council meeting, there was a request to write a letter of support for the Strathmore Overnight Shelter. In accordance with policy, that letter was emailed out to all of council, and then questions were raised about that letter of support. So as per policy, it's come to council now for consideration and discussion.
Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding the potential letter of support? Deputy Mayor Wiley?
Sure, since I'm the one who objected to this getting passed, not with a public discussion, I just want to highlight my concern. So if anyone's watching at home and they'd like to take a look at our agenda package, it's page 270, 271. The last paragraph on page 270 says, the town of Strathmore is supportive of Strathmore Overnight Shelter opening 24 hours a day. This will improve the quality of life for clients and could alleviate concerns within the community. And here comes my concern. Council is also supportive of Strathmore Overnight Shelter expanding the number of client beds, providing proper approvals have been received from the proper guiding legislative authorities. And so if I may speak to my concern. I believe in the inherent dignity and worth of all people. I believe that we as a council are incumbent upon taking care of Strathmore's homeless population. And so for that reason, I would always support the 20 beds that we currently have. My concern is that by expanding the number of beds, we're no longer just serving potential Strathmore residents. We're now putting ourselves in a situation where, let me put it this way, we live downstream from a city of 1.4 million people. That city has its fair share of problems, including homelessness. It doesn't matter how big we build our shelter, how many beds we offer, it will fill up. And so because I'm somebody who does stop and I talk to the homeless people of Strathmore, I've gotten to know some of them. And what I discover over and over again is I've almost met none that are from Strathmore. The majority of the people I meet are good people, but they're not Strathmore residents. And so I'm opposed to anything that would, we can't solve all the problems of the world. I've been elected to help solve the problems of Strathmore. And so if we continue to expand this, I'm afraid that it's going to cost our citizens more than I think the 20 beds which do serve Strathmore residents. And so for those reasons, I'm opposed.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Councillor Peterson?
I think at this point, Your Worship, it would be good to ask as Executive Director of the Overnight Shelter to speak to this, because I think there are some concerns that she could address that Councillor Wiley brought up.
Thank you. Pastor Karp, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just at the end of your sentence, it kind of broke off a little bit. So if, I don't know what...
Okay, I'm in a smaller town out in BC, but I would like an opportunity to address those concerns, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent, yeah. So thank you for letting me zoom in, and I appreciate the concerns, and I certainly understand what's being said there, Councillor Wiley. So currently, we screen the people that come in to the shelter. So I quite often do get calls from Calgary, Edmonton, other areas, and because the shelters are full there, and we're not in the business of bringing homeless populations into Strathmore. And so if that's the case, when the social workers or people call us from other cities, we actually turn them down. We say, no, this is not your home or your place of business. You know, where you live or where your family is. And we typically don't let them into the shelter. We turn them away before they even get there. But there are situations where the RCMP picked somebody up on the street, the hospital's releasing somebody, and so we do take them in those situations. The fact that we asked for a bit of an expansion is simply because it would expand our finances. We would have more opportunities for grants so that we could fund the shelter a little bit better to be open that 24/7.
Sorry, Pastor.
It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to bring a bunch more people into Strathmore.
We're losing some of your speech. It's a
As
little.
a matter of fact, in the last quarter, we have had a huge success rate of placing people in homes or sending them in. Hello? Time hearing you as well.
Yeah, we're losing a little bit of your sentences.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to address that concern is to look.
We've lost that part.
So Pastor Elizabeth, I can maybe fill in, some of the things that you told me, because we can't hear you anymore, but if you can, we can't hear you. So if you can text me or.
Concern, but we can
I think actually there's some sort of lag, like it's getting drawn out. It's a bandwidth thing or something.
Pastor Karp, if you can hear me. Pastor Karp, we're not able to hear you. There's a bit of a delay and.
It's muted now, so it's just a delay or a lag here. So.
Okay.
I think can she call? Can she?
Don't take them and just he is asking.
Pastor Karp, can you hear me?
I've asked her to call me on the phone.
We can maybe get you to call Councillor Peterson? Or Councillor Peterson could speak to some of the things.
So I now have you on speakerphone, Elizabeth. Let's try that.
Let's try that. Thank you.
Oh, can you guys hear her? So council can now hear you because we couldn't hear anything that that you said before. It was completely garbled. So if you can go back to the reasoning where you were talking about maybe I think it would be really helpful for this council to hear the transition that the shelter has undergone, and to address Councillor Wiley's issues about having some people, although in my experience still by far the majority are local, some people that are from out of town, what the partnership is that you've just developed to support our own community people through Hope Mission and Center Street Church, if you're able to speak to that. I think that goes a long way to talking about what partnership has done to support this project. And then the second thing, to talk about the statement in there that speaks to expansion is one that we already have. You've already had that ability to expand the population within the shelter. It already exists. You've been approved by fire regulations before, but this would just put it in a letter, and and having that a number does give some addition options for funding under the letter that is there. But if you could speak to the partnership, that'd probably be very useful for council to hear.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor. I thank you guys, Mayor, as well for listening. So we are partnered in with Hope Mission out of Edmonton right now, who does tremendous work out of Edmonton, as well as they do some work in Calgary as far as feeding programs, etc. So what they have done now is opened up a door of opportunity for us to have somewhere to get people into rehabilitation quite quickly. when people are serious about wanting rehab, and they are actually picking them up in refurbished ambulances and transporting them for me into a one-year program. And we've actually sent 4 people in since we started partnering with them in that. And they're also supporting us and helping us financially. They're also going to help us with all our payroll and financial statements and things like that, work with us. So they come to the table with 40 years of experience or more, and are quite well known for the work that they've done. So it's a real privilege and just a super help for us and for our clients in drawing that net a little bit further and wider to be able to help people. I do just want to say, though, and address again, if you didn't hear me, when people and social workers call me from other cities, from Calgary, etc., and want to bring people in from Calgary out to Strathmore, it is not very often that I say yes, unless it's extenuating circumstances, and they're going to be leaving again pretty soon. Where you see that we get people from other areas is like the RCMP pick people up and drop them at the shelter in those situations, or the hospitals, etc., where it's extreme and they have nowhere else to take them, and ask if we can take them. But we are not in the business of increasing homeless population in Strathmore. And actually, we have had huge success in the last quarter in placing people in homes, working with FCSS in town as well. They have really been helpful in the last few months as well. And just working together with other agencies and placing people either in rehab, in homes, or in different, and some are getting employed. We've had a huge success in the last quarter. So yeah, it's been huge in that area. Having Hope Mission on board with us has been tremendous. The whole thing about having the word expansion in there is that it increases our funding so that we can be open 24/7. And basically, council and mayor have very, very graciously, you guys have very graciously supported us. I feel that if we're open 24/7, it'll actually eliminate the fact and some finances burdens that the town carries as far as warming centers and transportation in some of those areas, because we'll be there. We'll be open the 24/7. And I feel that if we're there, we can even offer more support to our clients and get them to where they need to be. We actually only have a 3-month maximum stay at the shelter. So unless you are working towards, a goal, and you just got a job and you need housing, we might extend that for a bit. But otherwise, after 3 months, if you're just shelter hopping, you have to leave the shelter. You can't stay here anymore, and you can't stay in town. And we also communicate with the RCMP. If there's anyone that's banned, we keep an updated list and pass it over to them as well, and work together with them. They're amazing with us as well. So I hope that helps to address some of those concerns. If we I don't think we'll ever have that many people in, but if we have the ability to have a few more people, we get an increase in funding grants that we can apply for with the government.
Pastor Karp, it's Mayor Fuel. I'm wondering if I could ask you one question about possibly being open 24 hours a day. In the letter, it said that being open 24 hours a day could alleviate concerns within the community. Could you speak to how the center being open 24 hours a day could have a positive impact on the community?
Absolutely, because the clients aren't out there walking around with nothing to do. We're able to keep them in the shelter, and my understanding, I mean, I can't control what people do off the property, and not everybody that's wreaked havoc in town is from the shelter. But those that have some issues and problems, we will be able to keep them in the shelter and off the street. So the more they're off the streets, the better for the community, where we can then work more closely with them to redirect them, take them to some appointments, get them the help that they need for those that are serious about getting help. And again, I will stress that people that are not serious about getting help, they have a 3-month maximum stay, and then they have to leave the shelter, which means they have to leave town.
Okay, thank you. That clears up that question. And the letter would help greatly as far as being helped by Hope Mission, as far as supporting you folks
And by the government of Alberta.
and by the government of Alberta.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the letter, they don't want, Hope Mission very much believes in working with the town and with the community. And so it's very, very important. And I've already, said that you guys have given me huge, huge support, as well as the community for the most part have given us huge support at the shelter. We couldn't operate actually without it, considering all the volunteers and everything that we have. Like Denise has said in the past, we have over 1,800 per quarter hours of volunteer time alone.
Thank you. One last question, I promise. Could you maybe speak to situations if a homeless person comes to the shelter? Could you maybe just briefly discuss the different supports they would have if they come with an addiction problem or if they come with a mental health issue? Could you just briefly discuss how they're helped by the homeless shelter?
Absolutely. So we do an intake with every person that comes in and ask as many questions as possible. And then we ask, if they're experiencing addiction, we ask, do you want help? Do you want to get clean? So right away, if that's the case, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to phone Detox right now and do an interview with them on the phone with Detox. Then I work with FCSS for them to go in every morning and keep calling until they get into Detox and they get transported down to Fort Macleod at the moment, because that's the best place we have for Detox. That's the most efficient. And so we always ask them, what are your needs? Where are you heading? What can we do for you? How can we help you? And so we redirect them, work with them, follow up with them, if it means driving them into a doctor's appointments, those types of things. If their mental health is beyond our ability to care for, then at some point we have to call the RCMP to come and get them. And unfortunately, as you all are aware of, we don't have enough places for these people to be. So the RCMP is very willing. They take them to the Peter Lougheed Hospital. And by that night, the Peter Lougheed Hospital has sent them back to me in a cab. So, we're struggling for places like that. But we do definitely call in as many services as we can. We follow up with people. It's hard when we're not open 24/7 because most places are closed by the time the shelter opens. But when we're there in the day, we can do far better follow-up and make sure that, the needs are being met. And I stress again, the people have to be willing. They have to be cooperative. And if they're not, I sit down with them, I chat with them, and I warn them and tell them, this, you need to follow through with what we're asking you to do if you want to stay here.
Thank you. Thank you. That takes care of all my questions. Are there any other questions for Pastor Karp before Councillor Peterson?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Elizabeth, I want to address Councillor Wiley's concern that we are taking people in larger numbers from outside the community. And certainly we have people from outside the community. We all understand that. But the other part of that is that in my time in volunteering, since, a year into the inception of the shelter, I have seen far larger numbers from our own community, from our own diaspora, going into Calgary, where we've had to send our people into the city rather than them sending them our way. We send a lot more their way than they send ours. And definitely with the assistance now from Centre Street Church and Hope Mission, we will have now a lot more options to be able to, for placements for those people, because being open 24 hours a day allows you to bring in social workers to work with the clientele to be able to move them into the next phase of accessing the needs that they have, as you said before. And I think that that's something that our community sometimes doesn't understand.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Councillor. We definitely have to move people out of Strathmore more so than trying to keep them in Strathmore, because there just isn't places for them. And so we send them back and try and work with agencies in Calgary or even past Calgary, sometimes up to Edmonton, wherever. So having those partnerships is crucial in the success of the clients that come in the shelter as well. But you're right, there's far more being transported out of Strathmore than that's able to stay.
I also just want to say that the reason that this shelter is able to do that, and I want people to know this, it is because you have worked tirelessly. You take no money from the work that you do it all gratis, and along with the 1,700 to 1,800 hours of volunteer service per quarter that you have been able to inspire people to carry out, and somehow have been able to maintain that for 5 years and beyond. And the reason that happens is that you have a stellar reputation among the people. And the other group of people that we take very often from the GI, from the shelter in downtown Calgary, are people who are elderly and people who are extremely vulnerable. And those two populations sometimes who find themselves at risk in the Calgary environment find safety in the environment that you've provided.
Thank you for those kind words. But yeah, we have had an absolute increase in seniors coming into the shelter in the last 2 years. They can't afford to live, and they've been around Strathmore, grown up in Strathmore, and we have to ship them back to the city and try and find places for them to live in the city, whether they want to or not. There just is nowhere for them to be here in Strathmore.
Thank you. And the final thing that I wanted to address, we've recently experienced problems in the proximity neighborhood of Glenwood with the shelter, and sometimes they're not shelter residents, or sometimes they're a combination of residents that have been in the shelter and been banned, and they are sleeping rough, or they are choosing not to go into the shelter. And so when in having the shelter open 24 hours a day and having people that have the capacity to be in that shelter, it also now gives our bylaw a place where they can actually transport these people. And now they have a place to take them and a safe place for them to be. And that is speaking to what the mayor talked about in mitigating the circumstances of the issues that we faced in community.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. If there are no further questions of Pastor Karp, we would need a motion regarding the letter so that further debate and discussion can occur. Councillor Wegener.
I move that council authorize Mayor Fuel to sign the letter of support as presented in attachment 2 for the Strathmore overnight shelter.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion on the floor, we can have discussion and debate. Deputy Mayor Wiley, followed by Councillor Peterson.
Sure. I don't think I have words capable of expressing how much good work I think that the Strathmore overnight shelter is doing. I can't express how much I support the work that they're currently doing and want it to be open 24 hours a day, but at the exact same time, I oppose expanding it to potentially 40 beds. I know that maybe the stats somehow show differently, but much to my family's chagrin, I rarely walk past a homeless person or someone in need in town without stopping and talking to them. And in conversations, and often end in me driving them to the shelter, I discover that they are not from Strathmore. As much as I enjoy their company and I like talking to them and there's ways that I can help them, I don't think that Strathmore taxpayers should be supporting the other social needs that go along with having a shelter. So I understand that we're not increasing the amount that we're paying into it. I understand that other needs accompany having a shelter in town. So again, I don't think I'm capable of expressing how much I like that we have 20 beds to help the people of Strathmore. I just think that if you were to expand this to 200 beds or 2,000 beds, you would still be full because we live downstream from a city of 1.4 million people, and the province would like nothing better than to fund the problem out of the cities and into the rural. And so I support the letter up until the point when it asks to be expanded. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I just want to correct something. First of all, Strathmore Overnight Shelter is rarely full. We do have periods of time, especially in really cold times. And the thing about the homeless people is that their borders are pretty fluid because they're homeless. And so that's why all communities either make a decision to address the issue or they don't. And I can tell you that there are communities that have no shelter, that are just in dire, dire straits. And so I'm very grateful for the support of this council in supporting this letter and this initiative. and I am grateful for the work, Pastor Karp, that you do. You always talk about putting your time and your treasure where your mouth is, and that we are asked to always look beyond ourselves for the needs of others. And it is people like you who nurture this community into a place of goodness, and I'm very grateful. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I think one of the things I like about this, supporting this letter, is that Hope Mission, from what I've been told and from what I've heard from Pastor Karp and Councillor Peterson, is that they have a proven track record as far as servicing the needs of homeless. They have over 40 years of experience. And I think regardless of whether the homeless are from Strathmore or come to Strathmore, we run the risk of having people wandering the streets if there's no place for them to go. And I'm reassured by the comments from Pastor Karp that they are asked if they want help. There is a maximum amount of time that they'll be allowed to stay. They will get all the supports they need if they're willing to go through that. Being open 24 hours a day could do a lot as far as, like, I've heard communities say that they don't have a homeless problem, but there's an invisible homelessness or a hidden homelessness where in the past, before the homeless shelter was built, I had personally on walks run into people camping in bushes and things. And so if we don't have this open 24 hours a day and they can't get more funding, we do run the risk of more interactions in our community and people not getting the help that they need because they're not in the homeless shelter. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So I actually initially I came in here and and I read through when I read this initially, I didn't have any issues with it, and I came in here prepared to support it. But at the same time, I think that Deputy Mayor Wiley has raised a number of worthwhile points, and it's made me realize that I don't actually feel like I have enough information at this time to make an informed decision to support this. That doesn't mean I don't support this, but I at the same time I don't feel like I have enough. And one of the parts in here obviously discusses expanding the number of client beds, which sounds reasonable, but then I hear that it sounds like what we have now is not even really kind of at capacity generally. So I would prefer to bring this. I mean, I know there's kind of a time issue, but yeah, I would have preferred to have maybe been able to get into this in a bit more depth with perhaps a report from administration on the lay of the land, I guess you could say, because I do want to make sure that that we are taking care of Strathmore's vulnerable. That's important to me, but at the same time, I think that, and I actually I tend to walk around a lot. I also have engaged with a number of the regular people who I know are making use of the shelter or perhaps are homeless in our community. And I know that Councillor Wiley, or Deputy Mayor Wiley, is correct when he says that many of the people are not actually from Strathmore. So I mean, I would like to ensure that we are directing Strathmore's resources in the best way possible without inviting greater challenges for the community. And again, when I hear that we're not at capacity, or the SOS is not at capacity.
Not all the time, no.
Yeah. It makes me think that perhaps we should actually be discussing, and I'm not also clear on yeah. So at this time, I can't support the letter as it's written. However, I'm going to offer an amendment, actually. I will move that we support this letter with the last sentence removed, and that just deals with supportive of the SOS expanding the number of client beds. I don't, and again, like, you know, if I need to kind of, you know, I need to kind of mull all this over, and, you know, I didn't have the information from Pastor Karp prior to this. And so I'm going to have to look into this further, but yeah, so I will put forward that motion. And I guess I'd be interested to hear from members of council why it's important that we include that and how that will affect the reception of the letter from the person who it's intended to go to. Thank you.
Pastor Karp, could you speak to two things? One, is there a time crunch on this letter of support? And two, would the amendment would the amendment that deals with reducing the numbers or the expansion, does that impact being able to apply for the fund, for the help, as far as Hope Mission is concerned and the province?
Yeah, I can. They prefer to have the letter by the end of the month, by the end of September, preferably. I mean, if it's not possible, it's not possible. Without that phrase, I mean, certainly you can write it without that last phrase in there, but that last phrase is part of what expands funding for us. So it would make a difference. You know, and I will say this, I will add this as well. A lot of the people that come in, we're feeding a lot of people that are living in their vehicles, et cetera, as well. So sometimes when I have past capacity in there, it's because I have people coming in to eat that are living at large outside in their vehicles, or, you know, don't have proper home and stuff like that as well.
And these are Strathmore people?
Yes.
Yeah, they live in Strathmore in the county, and they may not be staying overnight in the shelter because they're living in their vehicles, but they eat every day. They shower at the shelter, they wash their clothes there. And then would you like to speak to the numbers of people who come into the soup kitchen and who access the pantry, who are also local?
There's up to 150 people on a Saturday morning between 10 and 12 that come in, anywhere from 100 to 150 people.
And that's also another reason for the capacity expansion.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Worship. I've appreciated the discussion that's happened tonight, and I appreciate having Pastor Karp on the phone. And you know, there's been some good discussion, but what I can't get out of my mind is the fact that someone who's experiencing homelessness in Strathmore right now may not be from Strathmore, but they might not be from Calgary either. They might be actually from far, far away. And there's probably a reason why they're not in their hometown right now. Because I think if they wanted to go back, they probably would. And they probably do. I've heard that we're not bringing people in purposefully to find shelter in our shelter. Some do find their way here. But ultimately, what I'm hearing is there's an organization in our town that's having success finding people who are at profound disadvantage rehabilitation, finding them help, finding them support, and finding them housing, finding them employment. And I think that these are the types of outcomes that we're looking to support in our community. These are the outcomes we want to see for people who are experiencing homelessness. What I'm also hearing in this conversation is that the increase in beds is not necessarily to bring more people in, but saying you operate more beds opens up more funding.
That's correct.
And funding is something that's extremely important to organizations like this. You hear that there's 1,800 volunteer hours every year, so that, you know, a little bit of funding can go a long way. And I also know that that funding can help offset funding that might be asked for from the municipality. So I am in support of the letter. I think if we can support our community of people, you know, whether or not they come from here originally, they're here now, which means they're my people. I know there's people sitting, I'm one of them, that I wasn't born in Strathmore, but I'm here now, and people come here from all sorts of places. And they're here now, which means they're my people. So I will be supporting this letter tonight. I think that the overnight shelter provides just an invaluable service to our community and a service to the homeless community that live here. And I hope that they have great success in the future, continuing to find people help, find people homes, and find people employment, because that's the ultimate outcome that I think you can look for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Councillor Wegener and then Councillor Peterson.
So again, just with this motion, I have done a little bit of work with Pastor Karp, but not as much as others have, but I have spent a bit of time with her, and I'm keenly aware of the amount of money it costs to run that overnight shelter. The utilities alone are astronomical. So if this letter of support would help them to get extra funding, I am all in favor of it. I have also been down here at the municipal building during the winter when they've had the warming shelters. The people who are here at the warming shelters cannot, with the shelter being closed, they have no place to go. The town opens up the facility here so they can come in and stay warm and not perish from the elements. I know I was here one day last winter, and there was probably about 8 to 10 people in here. The majority of them seniors that I saw at the lodge, who, for whatever reason or other, could not stay there due to their income status. So I do appreciate the concern about bringing in people from out of the community, but I am very confident in the vetting system that the Strathmore Overnight Shelter has. I'm very confident in Pastor Karp and her ability to run that. And if we can help anyway by signing a letter of support that will increase their funding, I am all for that. And then maybe it would, it costs money for the town to run these warming shelters and cooling shelters and supplying, and there's food involved in that. So I do support this letter as it is written.
Thank you. I think one of the things that you just brought up has kind of reminded me that, we talked about taxpayer funding. Our taxpayer dollar is going to possibly support people from outside of the community. If they get this kind of financial support and they work with Hope Mission, it may actually reduce the amount of times that we'll be asked for money, like the 20,000 we did recently. So we might actually save some on taxpayer funding by having a different level of government and a different group coming in. And I'll go to Councillor Peterson, and then I guess, Jonathan, I may turn to you as far as help on Councillor Montgomery's wording for his amendment.
I just have just want to iterate what you said, Mayor, that Strathmore taxpayers don't pay for the shelter. We have contributed on a voluntary basis, and in fact, Councillor Waddy was one of the people that generated that idea at one point. And I'm grateful for that. I want to also say that when Pastor Elizabeth was inspired, divinely inspired, I'll have to say, when she started that shelter, the people who froze to death on our highways, they weren't from Strathmore. But they certainly died here. And so I think that this shelter has mitigated that circumstance. And in those 5 or 6 ensuing years, that has not happened again. And it is due to the largesse of the people, of the hundreds of people in this community that contribute to that 1,800 volunteer hours every quarter. It's extraordinary. And so, if you're brave enough to ask Elizabeth Karp Kane's question, I know that she's going to say yes. And so, again, I don't support the amendment, and I do support the main motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Jonathan, would you be able to read back the amendment, or did you need Councillor Montgomery to craft it a bit?
I can read it out, and if Councillor Montgomery, if you want to just confirm to make sure I have it correct.
It was just to support the letter with the removal of the last sentence.
Yeah, which is council is also supportive of the SOS expanding the number of client beds, providing proper approvals, have been received from the proper guiding legislative authority. So to remove that sentence.
So we have that motion as far as amending the original motion. Pastor Karp, could you just clarify one more time, if that phrase was removed, would it hurt you as far as receiving the funding and the support of Hope Mission?
It would definitely hurt us as far as funding goes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have Councillor Montgomery's motion on the floor. Does everyone on council understand the motion? The amendment, sorry, thank you. The amendment to the motion. Okay, so we're voting on just the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? So the amendment is defeated, and now we go back to the original motion regarding the letter of support that was made by Councillor Montgomery. Is there any further discussion on that motion that was originally brought forward? Seeing and hearing.
You made the motion, right?
Yeah, Councillor Wegener made it. Seeing and hearing none, all in favor of the original motion? Opposed? Okay, so thank you. Sorry, Council, did you voted for it? I didn't see you. Thank you. So that moves us from item 10.5.
So it is passed, Elizabeth, and I will say thank you and goodbye. Good night.
Thank you, Pastor Karp.
Thank you.
We move now to item 11. 11.1, questions between councillors and council statements. 11.1A, Councillor Peterson has. Oh,
Does anybody else have anything?
feel free to hum.
You can sing. Do it
I have a question, actually, please.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So I just wanted to ask Councillor Wagner, actually, that like just now you made a comment about how sometimes seniors have been, I guess, asked to leave the lodge due to their income. Can you clarify? Like, I thought, isn't there a number of? I guess maybe if you could clarify just like how the, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, like that's the LAP grant, I think, that subsidizes rooms at the lodge. Can you, I guess, just clarify how it came about that seniors were asked to leave due to income?
Actually, this is a personnel issue and that, so, and I'm not privy to that, and I can't elaborate at all. I know I have seen them here.
I'm ready, Your Worship, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to just say in a statement today that today at 2 p.m. Alberta time, I had the privilege to watch and listen as the Canadian Medical Association took an important step on our reconciliation journey. As the Canadian Medical Association apologized for their role and the role of the medical profession in the past, as well as the ongoing harms caused to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people in the healthcare system of Canada. I also wanted to bring attention and my gratitude and thanks to our mayor and his counterparts on Siksika for initiating with Alberta Health and then Minister Shandro to move and to work really hard to mitigate some of those same problems in our own community and our own hospital. And I'm really proud of the role, Mayor, that you took and the efforts that you brought forward. And I hope that we can all do better. But I was very privileged today to sit with the Siksika people as they watched this apology unfold on Vancouver Island today. And I'm very, very grateful that this leadership had the wherewithal to anticipate and recognize the harms that were done and move forward to mitigate even before this was done. So thank you.
Thank you for that, and I would like to acknowledge the former health minister from the Conservative Party, Minister Shandro, who did a lot to help us in improving things at our own hospital. So thank you. Councillor Montgomery.
Your Worship, before I go back, can I just go back to onto the Strathmore Overnight Shelter? I would like to also offer my profound thanks to our MLA, Chantal Dion, for her support and her guidance in bringing these partnerships, these new partnerships about. She was absolutely wonderful in her support.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, okay. Saw the light out. Now that's good. We move now to board and committee reports. 11.2. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, earlier tonight, Councillor Wagner and I submitted a Woodemsa report to Council. There's no new things in here, but it is just a more fulsome report as a result of the request from Alberta Health Services for WDEMSA to refund a surplus of approximately $4 million. And so it was reported, it's been reported in the paper. And so WDEMSA did say that, that the numbers didn't accurately represent the surplus, that the surplus was in the area of $2 million. So there is ongoing discussion right now with Alberta Health Services. WDEMSA met with them on Monday. We have, they, AHS and WDEMSA, we both have some work to do to come to a place where we can fulsomely answer the questions that they've asked us, and they're going to provide us with greater clarification as to what they need going forward, and we'll keep you posted as to any information. And at any future time, once you've had I know you haven't had a chance to go over this, but I also knew that the paper was present on Monday night, and we anticipate that'll be in the next paper, it could be, and we just wanted to make sure that you had the information, and we're prepared to answer as many questions that you might have, or to find the answers to the questions you might have going forward. And I don't know, Councillor Wagner, if you have anything that you want to add to that, but thank you for your Mayor for your forbearance in allowing us to bring this forward tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. We move now to item 11.3, question and answer period. Any burning questions from councillors? Seeing and hearing none. Administrative inquiries, Jonathan? No? Any notices of motion? I don't believe so. We have no correspondence tonight, so that brings us to the conclusion of the public meeting, and we have 3 items to discuss in the closed meeting, so I'll be looking for a motion to go in camera. Councillor Wegener?
I move that council move in camera to discuss items related to section 24(1)A and 24(1)B(I) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act at 8:58 p.m.
8:50?
Sure.
Sure, we're learning to do the analog time.
Did I say 8:58?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You've heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We're going in camera at 8:50 p.m. Thank you to all who were here, and good night to the public. Thank you for being a part